to a new episode of A Blind Insight. So, sorry it's been on repeat for 2 or 3 weeks, but the weeks roll by, but we've managed to find time to bring you something different. So, I'm Simon Hill, and once again I'm joined by Billy Spakeman. How are we doing?
All right, not too bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all... well, I thought we'd take a step away from current affairs as we've covered over the last few episodes, and it really started when over a few incidents that have occurred to me in recent weeks, which made me think, I wonder what the most irritating or crazy questions or conversations we get dragged into as blind people are. So I put out a request on Facebook and to other blind people I know and said, obviously I could probably do this on my own, but it'd be interesting to get other people's contributions. And to be honest, there's some that I thought I'd heard it all, but there's some that have even flabbergasted me, to be honest. So
one of them stopped you coming one night, didn't it? One of your experiences.
Yeah, well, this is it.
We were all booked in, yes.
I'm going to start by, unfortunately, and I'll say straight away that I'm not saying all taxi drivers. I'm just saying it's becoming a more frequent experience. And to be honest, it's, as a blind person, you get a taxi because you like to think or hope that it's simpler and less stressful than running the gauntlet with getting a bus or a train or whatever else. But I've had so much frustration over the last few weeks with, even though if I use Uber, for example, then I always send the driver a message saying, can you meet me at the door, please, because I'm blind. So, just saying to them, look, can you just come and meet me because I can't come outside and see where you're parked and come to you. And then even if they say, reply and say, yes, got it or whatever, they arrive and then I go out there and I get the message and I stand there. And then the problem is now is because they're often electric vehicles now, and so I can't even hear an engine.
Oh, of course, yeah, they're silent, aren't they?
So, I sort of wander to the end of my drive and sort of wait there. And then, the classic, and then sometimes then they come on the phone and go, I'm outside. I'm like, yeah, I know you're outside. I'm outside, but I don't know where you are. I need you to come and meet me. And it's like, I'm outside. Yes, I know you're outside, but I'm outside as well. I'm here. Can you not, and you just go round this crazy circle of, I'm blind. I cannot see you.
Is it some of them their company policy that are not to get out the car, or?
Well, I possibly sometimes, but the company I use, because I've questioned them at the office about it, and they said, there is a note on there, but the drivers obviously aren't reading it. I'll remind them, and they've apologised. So, they obviously haven't got a policy that says they're not to. It's just, but even worse, even if they've picked me up before, they still do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the. And like I say, in the old days, you could aim for the engine or something or hear the noise. But then the best one was that, again, using Uber, I was stood outside, he was saying I'm outside or whatever. It turned out he wasn't even outside my house. It was further up the road.
Really?
And so eventually, and then when I looked at the what they charged me afterwards, he charged me for waiting time.
Really?
Because they've got this policy where so after 3 minutes they'll charge however much for waiting time. I think, well, A, I'm sure it wasn't 3 minutes, and B, it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
So it's...
I suppose for blind people, the electric cars are really dangerous, aren't they? Even if you're at... say you're at a traffic lights that bleeps, so it's time for you to go. You could hear a car slow down, but you can't hear anything now. So if some... nutter decides he's going to try and trip the lights or something, you've got no chance, have you? Because you can't hear him.
Well, you hear a lot of talk about these e-scooters and, on the pavement. People are talking about them, but never mind them. The electric cars are the same. There's, so it's... And there's literally, no way around that. That's why, you need the... And like I say, if you are walking around, and, I know... when you rely on sound so much, and I've stood there and literally they are, yes, you might be able to hear them when they get right to you, but you can't judge them in the same way as engines as to how far away they are, as to have I got time to cross the road here, or and sooner or later there will be an incident where a blind person gets crashed into by one, and then everybody will be, oh, how did this happen? But yeah, so that's my rant about taxi drivers over with, and there we go. I thought I'd start off with that for today. But so as I said, I put out a message to see what other experiences, or whether it be questions, conversations that other blind people have experienced in their life, and I was planning on trying to put together, say, a top 10, but to be honest, some of them are just so crazy. I couldn't begin to sort of try and rank them really. So I just thought we'd go through them all, and well, what I thought we'd do actually is some of them, see if you can try and guess any of them to start with, and see how we get on with that. So what do you think? One of the most common things we get asked is?
I would think access to shops that haven't got automatic doors is one, and you're standing there by the door waiting to come in, and everybody's just looking at you as though, well, open the door, mate, and come straight in. I would imagine that's one.
Well, I'm sure that does happen, but I guess the issue is that we don't. I mean, this is the thing, again, and I'll get accused of being negative against humanity for saying this or thinking this, but it's, in this day and age, be it because A, they're either scared for saying the wrong thing, or B, that they're just, so wrapped up in their mobile phone or whatever else they're doing that they don't even look at you, or they'll just walk. I mean, it happened to me the other day. Someone literally just walked straight into me, pretty much. I was just stood there. So, it wasn't like I was moving or getting in their way, so the top one really that sort of came out was when you get asked, what can you see? And when you say, well, in my case,
nothing.
No, nothing. What, really? Nothing? Like, no, nothing. Yeah, but you must be able to see a bit, though. No, nothing. I've got no eyes. I've got false eyes. I can't see anything. Oh.
So, I mean, what do they expect you to? If you can't see at all, are you not supposed to come out in society? Oh, he's got to be able to see because he's out here in the world, like.
Well,
don't they lock you away? They must think that, don't they?
Well, that ties in with, again, this hadn't happened to me, but someone told me a story where they were somewhere and somebody said, naughty, naughty, out without your carer. And they're like, what?
Really?
I mean, would you say that to anybody?
Yeah.
The assumption is just, and then of course, and then it's not really a comment, but a couple of people said that they find it a bit sort of, I mean, it's difficult because on the one hand, I suppose you could say that people are asking, and by telling them they're learning, but equally it's a bit like, well, would you ask these people for all their ins and outs like this? So they say, oh, well, you must live with somebody. Then no, I live on my own. Oh, well, how do you cook? I cook, and you just go on and on. Every answer you give is like, no, that can't be right. There must be somebody. That no, I live on my own. There's no one. I don't have a human in the cupboard that I can bring out whenever I. And you go on and on like that, and they just won't. Or and then of course we get into the bit. Oh, can't you have an eye transplant? Is another one that comes up. Well, not as far as I know.
No, wouldn't have investigated that.
I hope that if it does become an option, then blind people of the world will be, informed about it. But because of course, I think what is they think of things like when people have their cataracts done, or what's it called? There's another one where they. The Cyrus, I can't remember what it's called. Yeah. Where if your vision goes a bit cloudy, they can give you a new the part that's literally just replace the bit on the front of your eye to give you a clearer sort of window to look through, basically.
Yeah.
So there are parts of the eye they do stuff with, but as for the whole thing being replaced, if it's not working, then as of yet, nothing definite has been. I mean, maybe I'm sure it's been tried by people somewhere, but and then also you get told, oh, well, not even in China or in America. I said, well, not as far as I know.
You must have some really strange conversations, haven't they? What has anybody said to you? Well, what's it like being blind then? And you go, you could try it if you want. Like, close your eyes and see how you can get about. Like.
Well, again, and the other thing is also, what do you see then? Just black? Or no, I don't see anything. Oh, but you must be able to see some light. No, nothing. There's nothing. In my, obviously everyone's case is different. Some people do see light and dark, but when you say no, look, I've got false eyes. There's nothing there's no part of my eye to receive anything, anymore. It is just nothing. Um, and in the end, you end up saying the same thing, and you end up feeling like you're sounding rude or rude. But like,
Yeah, yeah.
just God's sake, I know you've asked me a question, I've given you the answer. Just, I wouldn't say I could see nothing if I could see something. It's just.
And you're sort of thinking, well, what do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, it's
almost like you think, well, I'll make up a story just to get rid of them, and then you think, well, if I start doing that, I might be here hours talking to them about it, and completely dig a hole for myself, and I can't get away. So you have to be really careful, I suppose.
But like I say, it's a difficult balance because you want, you don't want people to be frightened to ask, but equally when they've asked and you've answered them, don't blooming argue with me about what I'm doing, or if, and then of course we get into the whole, well, in my case again, don't you have a guide dog? No. Why don't you have a guide dog? Well, it just never seemed to be the right thing for me, and you wouldn't, and would you say to, and you're thinking, well, do you say to other people you meet, have you got a dog? No. Why haven't you got a dog? It's perfectly acceptable that not everybody wants to, have, but it's because of this perception that the guide dog is the solution to all blind people's problems. I
suppose it's like when you said initially, everybody thinks that you meet somebody and they've got the voice and they expect you to lay your hands on the face to find out what they're like. Well, why would you want to do that at all? Would you? And that's a conception that's come from various films and things that have been on where, and the person who's blind is running the hands over the skin and the cheekbones and I'm trying to make an image, but in reality it's not like that, is it?
Well, no, and again, as I keep saying on this show, I can only speak from my point of view. As my situation is, I'm totally blind. I've got false eyes. I can't see anything. There's no. So my case really, in my view, is pretty simple. It's surely easier for people. I would have thought it was easier for people to understand me. So sorry, now I can't see anything. For them to say, well, I can see light or dark, or I can see in front of me but not to the side, or my peripheral vision's not very good, and all that stuff. But yet, even though I think that mine is simple, it's still it's the, and then we get to the thing which. And it's funny because again, amongst blind people, we talk about this sometimes and how it makes sort of feel, or and it sounds like a genuine sort of, it sounds like praise or admiration, whatever you want to call it. But to us, we sort of find it irritating when people say, "Oh, I couldn't cope, I wouldn't be," and we sort of think, well, we don't have any choice. No. We're not. What's our alternative? It's a case of, it is what it is, and we do the best we can with it, and we don't. God, if you're thinking it's easy, it's not easy. It's far from easy. We, cry tears of frustration, bang our head against a brick wall because the world just isn't equipped to work for us as it is for, people who can see. So when the people say, "Oh, no, I couldn't cope," so well, you don't know, do you?
No, and I mean, everybody has the capacity to adapt in whatever way is needed, isn't it? Really. So are they going to say, "Oh, well, I'd just stop"? It's like hitting a brick wall. No, you'd find a way, wouldn't you? And I presume, the support that you'd get from people around you, but also the support you'd get in various bodies that help people that are blind. You'd immediately be engulfed in that family, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, again, that's and I can't remember if I mentioned it before on this show, but again, it's another assumption that people make that, and even from people that know you or whatever, it's they assume or a classic argument I end up having with people is the direct payment system. Whereby, other people say, "Oh, can't you get direct payments and pay for somebody's help?" I said, "I've tried. I've been told I can't get it." Yeah, and why? Well, it's either because you work and your income's too high, and or you basically you have to you have to say it's on the one hand in life you're always trying to strive and show that you can cope and do things, but yet to get assistance you need to basically say along the lines of I can't dress myself, I can't wash myself, I can't feed myself, basically, which to me is just makes me feel utterly degraded. And I think, well, if this is what I have to do to get help, then frankly I'll do with that. You know what I mean? It's so difficult to make yourself sounding capable when you've spent your entire life trying to
Time to be
show that
capable.
you are capable, and fighting against people's perceptions of, and again, and it's funny because now I've started work for the DWP, working on Universal Credit, and on their accessibility or alternative assistance, to help people who can't necessarily do everything online. One of the first questions is ask a friend or family member to help you. I'm just like, there's this assumption that that the people have just got people to help them. Just because you're blind doesn't mean you're exempt from having family that are either they might all be dead, they might all be estranged from them. You might not have the particularly any friends around or not at hand. That happens to many sighted people. So why is it this assumption that if you're blind that doesn't happen? And it's this sort of get out sort of from organisations where they think, oh, they must have someone to help you, and you're like, well, I might be able to find somebody, but I don't know whether it'll be tomorrow, next week, next month. I'd like to get this sorted now. If I could see, I'd just do it.
Yeah, the rest of the stuff that goes on around is the same as everybody else, isn't it? It's just that you're in a slightly different position to everybody else and have to adapt accordingly.
Well, like I say, you're not, just because you're blind or indeed have any disability doesn't mean that other things that life throws up doesn't happen. It's like I say, families can go their separate ways. Friendships could be, all that same stuff goes on. And really, it's kind of also difficult because as a blind person, somebody can annoy me or upset me, for example, but I sort of feel I can't challenge them about it or respond to it because I think, well, I might need their help tomorrow.
Yeah, and also, I mean, say somebody knocks you, and then you run the risk of him saying, "Oh, he's only reacted like that because he's blind." They'd use that as a tool in a way, wouldn't it? Which is nothing to do with it, really.
Well, and again, it's this. People seem to think that but it's strange because on the one hand, out and about in society, you get instances where, if I'm somewhere and I'm with somebody, the amount of times that they speak to the person I'm with, not to me, and then even when I answer, because obviously I can still hear what they've said, and even when I answer, they still then address the next bit to the person, not to me.
Yeah.
I was like, hello, I'm talking to you. I'm even talking to you, but you're still not talking to me. And it's that, but yet on the other hand, so on the one hand, it's viewed that we can't really speak for ourselves or think for ourselves, but on the other hand, we're expected to manage with the changes and the all the issues that get thrown around in the modern world, particularly in this day and age where they're trying to push people down the road of technology with all sorts of things. And I mean, ironically, in a way, as blind people, we're often ahead of the curve on technology because we have to rely on it already. But yet, they assume that it's a bit like at the moment there's a bit of a debate brewing up about using digital tickets for football matches rather than style cards or paper tickets. So, we're sort of saying, well, okay, it's the way it's going, but you can't just, people need to get their head around the fact that you're never ever going to be able to just have a blanket approach. Many people will use their phones anyway. Many people use their phones for everything nowadays, so they won't care about having their tickets on their phone rather than, old-fashioned paper or whatever. But you know, society thinks it's been accommodating, but it's still
way behind.
well. It just
where it should
won't
be.
take on board the fact that you can't have a blanket approach to all these things. You know, it's you know, and if you really want to, if we're ever going to be an inclusive society, then you know this is the kind of people need to accept. Organisations need to accept that they're going to always have to make some small adjustments or let people give people the option basically that look, I'm sorry, you know, it may work for you, but this doesn't work for me, and you know I'm paying you my money, so therefore you know it's I'm not doing it just to be awkward. It's just literally a practical for a practical reason that this is the way I prefer to do it. So yeah, crazy stuff. But yeah, and then another one that I mean, again, like I said, I thought I'd heard all of them, but then you know it's amazing what other people have experienced. So you know, someone told me that they were literally once asked blatantly, "Can you take your eye out?" And I mean, I seem to have enough trouble
That's
convincing
something
people.
my mum used to say to me. If you know, you I don't know what you're doing. You're poking your eyes.
Yeah,
You'll
you'll
take your
eye
eye
out,
out.
Yeah. But you know, like I said, as I was saying earlier, I have trouble convincing people that I've got full size, and you know, and then other people it seems are just blatantly, oh well, can you take it out? I said,
Yeah,
well,
can you show us? What would they do if you did? I mean, it's faint or something, wouldn't they?
probably.
Blimey.
But so, and then I genuinely couldn't believe this. I mean, then someone told me a story. They were on a night out. They were on a night out once, and they presumably were people they know, but they got someone hit them on the back of the head to see if their eyes would fly out that way. I'm just like, well, I'd like to think you were joking, but they swear they're not. But
Do you get? I mean, do you get instances where I don't know? Say you're in a restaurant, and do you get either the waiter or somebody go, do you want me to cut that up for you? Do you want me to do so and so for you? And you go, no, I'm quite capable, yeah.
do you
But
know
you
what?
can't see.
Do you know what? That's only happened once to
Really?
me in my life. That actual question only happened once. You get it's kind of difficult because there's so much going on. So I just sort of, you know, when I tell them what I want, put my order, whatever. Then when everything comes, I just sort of, when they say what it is, I'll say, oh yes, that's me, please, and I just keep my hands off the table and still let them put it down and yeah. So to be fair, I think generally they are quite good. You know, like they'll often say, which you know they say to sighted people as well, oh, be careful of the plate, it's hot or whatever. Or
Yeah.
I think in certain jobs, because you are, I mean, you know, God, you're dealing with, you're serving children and all sorts going on, and but yeah, I can't say I've had that I've had that question only once, and then I mean I'm sure they you know look at you know and wonder. I mean, it's one of those things I've never. I'm trying to think if I've ever actually been asked the question directly, but I'm sure when I'm eating there in front of people, I'm pretty sure I can feel the eyes on me. You know, as like,
Yeah.
you know, oh, how's he eat or whatever, or how's he.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's funny because I went to it goes back to the thing of even within your own world of whatever disability you're dealing with, there's still things that you never have to think about. And so I went to a dinner a couple of months back, and it was 3 courses, and the first course you ate blindfolded. Well, of course, you know that was just a laugh for me. I blitzed that, and
So you come out tops from
well,
that.
people were asking me.
I bet they're going, Tim Ferry,
Yeah.
Tim Ferry's.
So you know, people were asking me, you know, blimey, how would you do this or whatever, but then the next course it was and the one course was just eating in silence to replicate, you know, people who with hearing loss or which, you know, again doesn't really affect how you physically eat in that sense. But the big one for me was where you had to eat with only one hand, and your other hand, and it had to be your weak hand. So in my case, my left hand,
Yeah.
and keep your other hand behind your back. And so of course it's a bit of a blimey, how do you cut things? You know, so, and like I said, that was, you know, for all the challenges that, you know, techniques whatever I've used, and perfected over the years of eating without being able to see what I'm eating, doing that with one hand. I mean, okay, maybe it was compounded for me because I couldn't see either, whereas other people could see, obviously, but even though they were only using one hand. But yeah, but it's still the point of, well, you know, pretty much most things you eat, you're using two hands, so to have to do it with one. Yeah, and that shows that, you know, for all the things that I complain about being blind, there are things that, you know, I never run into, and you know, and that's, you know, just the way.
I suppose
the
if
way
you're
it
a
is.
amputee or a thalidomide victim and that, you've got to totally change the way that you approach things, ain't you? In terms of, like you say, eating. If you've only got one limb, and then you've got to work out how you're going to just use that other limb to do everything. I mean,
Yeah, and so and like I say, you know, it's you know, it's why the disability and all these things just should not and cannot be all thrown into this one. Oh well, we've ticked that box. You know, we've done everything we can to help. You know, you haven't. You've got to look at understand every situation, the unique challenges that they all throw up, and yeah, and it just it baffles me more than ever because anyone that's worked for, you know, organisations, particularly larger organisations, know that diversity and inclusion, you know, there's whole departments of people supposedly supposed to be doing this sort of stuff, but yet when I got into the DWP and I read did their learning for diversity and inclusion, disability had one page, you know, and I think, you know, it's just not good enough.
no, so there's a massive umbrella that, you know, covers everything in there, really.
And you know, and the things, of course, are going back to these sort of questions and comments we get. You know, it's difficult because everyone's got their own sense of humour. You know, one thing that one blind person finds funny, another one will probably burst into tears. You know, that's the difficulty as well. And there's no way of sort of. But then again, that's the same with anybody. You know, what one person finds funny, another person finds, you know, dreadful. But then, you know, so again, I've not had this said to me. Well, not that I remember anyway. But I have often considered doing this for Halloween to trick or treaters, but I've never done it. But people say, "Oh, you're all right for party games and Halloween then," and they're like, "Oh, if you can take your eyes out." So it's, oh, yeah, I never probably did that, and they're probably going to report me to the police or something or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not that cruel, but yeah, and then another one is, I've already sort of said it really about cooking, and you know, and people just generally not being able to get their head round. They go, "Do you have to use microwave meals because you can't cook?" So, well, no, I do use microwave meals sometimes, the same as many people do. But you know, I think it's just this thing of.
Is it a case that you sort of have to discipline into a routine? So, I mean, I know with our kid, because he was sighted and now he's virtually blind, so he had to then almost like have trials where he knew where everything was, and then that was a set place where he knew the pan was, he knew where the so-and-so was. So he then worked out his system so that he could, and he still cooks and everything, so, you know, that's fine. But it took him a while to adjust in a way.
Yeah, well, the key is, and it's why, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'd be like this anyway, but it's particularly, you have to have your own environment, and again, you know, each of their own. Some blind people that I know cook, you know, more adventurous stuff than I do, but then I stick to I try new things, and then I think, well, you know, if it goes wrong, there's only me that's got to eat it, so it doesn't matter. But you know, and then but it's about ultimately for me having your own space and your own system that no one's going to mess with. So you know, there's nothing more irritating than, you know, if I don't know, if you're at home and I don't know, you put something down, so you might put something down in the kitchen or whatever. I think I'll come back to that later. And somebody in the meantime, for whatever reason, decides to move it. I then come back later, it's not there. I was like, well, you know, where's that gone?
Where's it gone?
And you know, and it might only be a few feet, you know, to the left or right or something. But I then have to go carry out a forensic inch by inch search of, wherever it might be. Whereas if you can see, you can just look round and possibly instantly spot it, and that's stress over with. But yeah, with cooking, it's a case of, equipment that you feel safe with, of course, and not and stuff. I mean, really, a lot of cooking's really a lot. It's about timing as much as anything. But you just, you can, if it's a new thing, you just build up your confidence. Basically, you start simple, and then, I mean, like for example, there's a couple of things that I have tried once and never, like. Some things are more tricky than others, like trying to fry an egg and getting that right is very tricky.
Yeah.
But then, like, for example, you can there's different ways that you can find to do it without putting yourself in danger, or you just, rather than having several things on the go at once, you just deal with one thing at a time.
One thing at a time. I wondered if modern equipment had made anything easier, or did you just cook the traditional ways?
Yeah, well, it's funny you ask that, because I'm actually at this moment in the contemplating joining the air fryer brigade. But I mean, it's like anything, I suppose. Convenience is convenience, whether you're blind or not. But me at the moment, I just I do. I use a hob, so I mean, I've got a gas hob at the moment, which isn't my personal preference, but it's just what was there when I was already in the house. So it's you may do what you got, but you, like I say, but I don't do anything. I don't do like a full blown roast dinner or something with all pans and trays on the go and everything. I just have no more than 2 pans on the go. So say I do something with pasta or something with rice, so you've just got the one with your that you've got doing the main stuff in, and then the other one to the side, and but yeah, otherwise it's just the oven. You learn, well, it's a bit well, it was one of the first things I learned, because again, I'm fortunate in the fact that well, not fortunate, but I benefited from, because I was a blind boarding school. One of the things when you got to year 10 was that you cooked your own tea twice a week in the boarding house. So that's where I first learned about pretty much frozen stuff out the freezer. Pretty much 9 times out of 10 it's either 20 or 30 minutes in the oven, so you and then so things like that you learn. And then just little things like how to make sure you keep your hand, like not having the handles sticking out where you might knock things off, keeping them, the saucepan handles turned in, which is sensible for anybody. And then just being careful, basically, not rushing around, not being respectful of that things are hot, and and so it's just taking your time, and like like a lot of things, what size people might do quicker, I do a bit slower, but it's I'd rather do it slower and do it safely. But but air fryers are an interesting one, because I haven't taken the plunge and bought one yet, but they seem to be, it seems to be that you can do a lot of things with them, and of course, well, from an energy point of view, it's rather than heating, because the thing is, again, because I'm living on my own, I'm only ever cooking for one, so heating a whole oven just for one tray of stuff feels a bit like sledgehammer to crack a nut sometimes. But I think I will end up getting one, because particularly if I can see advantages to it. The main thing I struggle with really is judging portions, because apart from anything else, you buy stuff, and it seems to be very difficult. Apart from if you buy ready meals, it's very difficult to find. You can't just buy, say, whatever you buy. It always seems to be led to, it's at least for 2 people, or a recipe's always for 2 people, or whatever, and you have to try and work it out. Okay, so I end up sort of cooking or probably eating too much of a portion. But it's, apart from that, it's just experience, it's just practice, like anything. But it's just being. But I mean, in terms of other technology, the main sort of help really is that now there's an app that you get for your smartphone, which you can read tins and labels with, which
Oh wow.
it's a bit of a faff depending on how the label's been designed, but you can usually establish at least what it is. Whereas in the past, you'd have to come up with all sorts of, I'd either have my tins in alphabetical order or something, and then of course if somebody came and messed with it, you'd like, oh God.
Yeah, you've had peaches on toast or something.
Yeah, so it's, but like I said, I mean, it's it's just anything else really. There's like I said, for people who are more adventurous than me, you can get talking thermometers and talking weighing scales and all this kind of stuff.
I suppose part of it is, for want of a better word, doing it as normally as possible, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you just...
That's the challenge, in a way.
Well, you just... Or keeping it as simple as possible.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
like for example, I don't... I mean, so for example, I was... When I decided to learn to cook make a risotto a while back, and so... and of course, I thought, well, I need to try and judge how to. I haven't got any scales, so how am I going to get the right amount of rice it is? Then you read somewhere that someone said it's about a cupful. Okay, so you try a cupful, and then that either seems to be too much or not enough, and it's just trial and error. You figure things out as you go along, but ultimately, I would never. Well, I'd have to be very brave or do something I'm really well practiced in to cook for somebody else, because I'd be so, like I said, if I mess it up, then it's only me that's got to eat it. But it's, but yeah, there are gadgets and things you can, and of course, some people who can see a bit, I know that they put might put certain marks on dials and things like that of different, bright colours if they can't particularly see them, or that's another thing. These days, of course, touch screens are the rage. So like when I was looking at air fryers, finding one, I did find one in the end, but finding one with old-fashioned buttons or dials rather than touch screen, which is frankly useless. That's the challenge these days as much as anything. The fact that everybody's getting rid of the tactile buttons and things, but so again thinking.
So again, generally, designers and that have got no thought really for the whole community. Really, they're marginalising people.
Well, but you just think, all right, it may look sleek or whatever. That they may think it looks better, but was it really such a problem having buttons or I've never heard anybody complain about it. So it's, but that's
a marketing. I mean, you'll get a television and then the week later go, oh, next year's model's got red buttons instead of green buttons. You better get these, and people just fall for it and go and buy a new telly, don't they?
Well, it's like they keep redesigning the same thing. You think, how on earth could you come up with? But of course, there's people, that's their job to try and tell you, oh, we've changed it, when really, well, have you? How many times can you change the same thing? But it's, but yeah, it's.
You've got about 2 minutes
all right,
left before your last track. So it's
yeah. So, hopefully people found that entertaining, amusing, frightening, whatever.
Maybe I don't know about raising awareness, but it's people's perception. And hopefully Paralympics start soon. Hopefully that again tends to inform people certainly for the time of the Paralympics.
Yeah.
Whether it sustains it, I don't know.
Well, this is again what I don't understand. I mean, the Paralympics now has been broadcast every time for about 2000, or at least getting on 15 years, and yet we still get asked these questions, and you still say, oh, and yet they see disabled people doing all these sports and everything, but yet you're still perceived as, why are you even leaving your house? But again, thoughts, comments, contributions, email me simonhill_6@hotmail.com. And thank you for listening to this episode, and as well as emailing me, you can also leave your comments on the podcast page as well. It would be good to hear people's thoughts and stories, and some crazy tales there about the conversations we get dragged into as blind people, but it makes for a bit of humour, I think. But anyway, Until next time, take care and stay sane.